And even though I think I have it together, but I can clearly remember feeling like trapped with all of this angst, like stored inside of my body.
Yeah.
Not thinking that other people can read up, like, you know, feel that, or not thinking that I could just mask it always. And I can just remember back to that time and be like, that's probably why that didn't come in for you.
Yeah. And I think you still have some of that.
A little bit. Yeah. Awesome. There's always more work to do.
Yes, we always do. Actually, I think that's from your father's side.
Do you know what's so fascinating? I'm telling you, you always read my mind. And I'll tell you why. So when I did the retreat last week, and we had already done the work, and we had come up with like this, you know, fibroid tumor that I've been dealing with that comes off and on, and it was connected to the mother lineage and mother wounds, which was very obvious. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. That's so obvious to me. So naturally, when I did the retreat, it all came out, and I'm like, oh my God, perfect. This is like perfect. Well, at the end, it was almost like a little voice inside my head was like, just so you know, that was like the sneak peek. This other father wound stuff is coming for you. I'm like, oh God. And I knew it. It's okay. Yes. I'm ready for it. But that's exactly what I learned at the end was, this is the next chapter. Get ready. Good morning, Dr. Jon.
Good morning, Jenn.
We meet again.
Yes, we do.
On the best of terms and the best of ways.
In the best of days.
I'm so excited to talk to you today and be hosting here on Victor's podcast. It's really an amazing honor. I would love for you to introduce to the audience kind of a synopsis of what you do.
So I'm a licensed chiropractic physician. Along my journey, I went from treating more sports injuries, rehab, orthopedics, and finding more and more of a holistic approach through learning different, I would say, neuroemotional techniques. And when I say that, there isn't a neuroemotional technique, but mind-body techniques, because the mind and emotions affect the body and vice versa. And so through some of those techniques, certain intuitive techniques, certain energetic techniques, I've created an approach that really addresses the body and tries to do a holistic healing approach to the body of whatever the individual needs through their, nutrition, through their lifestyle, through their physicality, through their mental emotional state, through their relationships, through their whole life, and what is their goals, what's blocking them, what are their patterns that are inhibiting their full health potential, and really trying to approach that with open eyes, and trying to help them achieve whatever their optimal that they're ready for. Not everybody's ready for their optimal right away, but as long as they fully choose in, it's a very organic approach, I would say.
Yeah, I could say for me, having the session with you that we had a couple of weeks ago, even before when we met before and we were just chatting that like 4-hour day that we had, I thought, I think he's reading my mind. I'm like, how is he reading my mind, and how is he going so far deep into me with really not knowing me? I thought that was super fascinating. So I know we talk about holistic healing, and that really rang true for me. I'm like, he's tapping on all kinds of buttons, and how is he getting there? Yeah,
there is a intuitive level that I allow myself to go. There are, I would say, maybe even gifts that I have that allow me to see things, see patterns, see emotions, see lineages that I can just follow. It's almost like a GPS roadmap, I just see where the arrows go and see where does it stop that actually allows that healing to happen. What's at, and then start to explore what's at that point that needs to be revealed. And so there's a little gifts there, I would say.
Those were just like divinely dropped into you.
Yeah, those weren't taught.
No, they definitely weren't.
Weren't taught. But you also have to allow it. Especially growing up in a household where things were very black and white, things are very Western medicine, it's like, being that different is something you have to allow, and you have to heal yourself enough to allow it as well.
How did you know? Did you know early on that you had special gifts and something intuitive inside?
No, because I think, again, that made you different growing up. That makes you, trying to get attention, or, they're not appreciated. So they were never nurtured at growing up. There were hints growing up, but that was personally ignored until I got more into the healing things and listened to those intuitive knowings, intuitive sights that actually kept consistently being accurate, kept consistently being helpful, kept consistently, seeing a truth of sorts. Sometimes you have to say, okay, it has a truth to it, but there's the interpretation of the truth too that you have to then, because it's working through metaphors sometimes. It's like, okay, what does this metaphor mean? Versus it's not always literal. And like 3 days later, it's like, oh, that's what it meant, But
Victor and I were just talking earlier this morning before we started about, is there a universal truth, or is it like open to interpretation? And I thought, oh, that's such a good question. And for me, I came up with like probably both.
I would say both. I think there is a universal truth to a certain degree that can be tapped into. And I think I do tap into here and there. But then there's a individual truth, because it comes from your filters, it comes from your perceptions, it comes from your interpretations, as well as it comes into how does it apply to your life. And so that truth is going to be different for each person, and doesn't make it wrong person to person, but it just is their truth, or what applies to their life, their lifestyle, their relationships, their healing. So there's a little bit of both, I would say,
Was there a catalyst for you? You knew you had these gifts and they were kind of like on the back burner. When you finally decided to go into this work, was there something that happened?
I would say there's a few things along the way, because there's a lot of studying I've done along the way. And so different, seeing other people who had certain gifts, and like, oh, that's possible. So first you have to know it's possible, that, you're not just making things up. You see, some people tapping into some of their gifts, that's okay. Then it becomes a curiosity, and the curiosity is one of the biggest things that helps you start to nurture your gifts. Then having certain mentors acknowledge, like, oh, you have, how did you see this? Or you're coming up with something very interesting that I think is very helpful, very unique, it's like, and they're like encouraged to keep going. That encouragement, that permission, especially when you grow up in authoritative households or whatever, sometimes you're looking for that permission. And so once you get that permission, it allows that exploration. And then, again, with any skill, with any talent, sometimes it needs nurturing, it needs practice. And that practice and that healing allows sometimes for more gifts to show up. And so, yeah, you build a foundation of allowance that, like it's almost like those Where's Waldo games. Like once you start to allow yourself to see everything, sometimes things just pop out. And the more you train your sight to see in different ways, the more things pop out. So.
When you're saying this, it just reminds me of I just went on a trip and I was at a retreat and driving from Miami to Tampa, and I think I was in such a headspace. I had downloaded all this information from myself, and I was just in this really raw, open space, and everything was coming to me like assigned, like specific names of people on a road sign, and I'm like, what in the world is happening? But I always call it like when my cab light's on. So when my cab light's on, I can collect all this information because I'm really open to it.
Yeah.
I'm doing the work and I'm there with it. Sometimes if I'm closed off, I don't get any kind of information.
Yeah. Well, sometimes, again, these are patterns, and it's allowing ourselves to see universal patterns, life patterns, sometimes our behavioral patterns, like each thing is trying to tell us something. These are all messages. Mm-hmm. Are we open to the messages? And sometimes we're so used to feeling undeserving or unworthy of messages that we close ourselves off. Sometimes we're so used to things being seen as things that are going to affect us negatively, so we only are looking for those messages versus the positive messages. So there's a lot of awareness, as well as, we don't want to be blamed for something else, so we don't want to learn what these patterns are really trying to tell us, that we can actually get out of these patterns and have better, easier, more graceful ways forward into success, into betterment of some sort.
So I'm just thinking right now, if someone was listening and they're like, I kind of get what they're saying, but sometimes I block the messages, because I know that's happened for me. What advice would you give them, or insight into that?
Well, again, curiosity is a good start, because wondering whys are things that get the brain starting to be open to see things, versus judging, versus self-judging, prejudging. That closes one off, because as well as if someone thinks things have to be done in a certain pattern, a certain order, a certain way, then they're also closing themselves off, because they're not knowing that the universe can just drop a lottery ticket on them at some point. And if they're just saying, no, that can't happen to me, then they walk past that lottery ticket. So I would also say that sometimes things are in timing. If it's not the right time for them, if they're not ready for it yet, that's okay. So again, no judgment. It is, but if something's ringing to them, like, okay, there's some message here for me, but I'm not sure what, that's where the inquisitive, that's where the curiosity starts to come in. And just to be able to sit with it, just to be able to allow whatever message come in, even if it's something that you think, that would never be for me, that's not the type of message that would come to me. It just might, So it is, I would say the curiosities and the asking the why questions are the things that allows the brain to be open, and if you allow your brain, your emotions, your mental acuity to be open, that's where creativity can come in. That is where messages can come in. That's where life changes can come in. So
I had a friend of mine, a fellow entrepreneur, that's super duper creative and has a bunch of ideas. And we were talking about how when ideas travel from people to people, and if you're not ready for it, you can literally see them travel on to someone else, and you're like, wait, that was my idea. But you weren't ready to receive it at that time, or you weren't ready to put it out there in the world. And it was really fascinating.
Yeah, because sometimes the world's ready for that idea. So
and you're just not, for whatever reason.
You're just not, or you don't think you're enough to do that, or all my ideas aren't going to really flourish. So that's probably just a throwaway idea. It's like where somebody's throwaway idea is an idea that somebody just prospers from, because they are okay failing. They are okay looking foolish. They're okay with it not working out. They're okay wasting some money. We were
just talking about that. That's so funny.
Yeah. So, and I can say that, I've seen that myself, and, it is sometimes, again, that can be from their personal upbringing, the environment they grew up in, the relationship they had with their siblings, the parents, their friends, but it can also be ancestral. There can be an ancestral thing that, someone in the ancestral lineage tried something and then got blamed for it, for wasting the family's money or bringing poor attention to a family, and
shame on the family.
And so that shame comes down the generations, that the person has a hard time and they don't know why they have a hard time, moving forward or trying new things. And then that's where the ancestral clearing of emotional baggage helps. So
that's what I was thinking of. Like, how does someone even know if they're at that spot where it's ancestral? Because until I was talking to you and you were like driving things back through decades, I'm like, well, how would I know that?
Most people won't. I mean, you have to think of society doesn't think in those terms. So if society doesn't think in those terms, then why would somebody else, come up with that? As well as, there's a balance, because there's a lot of people who shrug off responsibility. It's like, oh, it's not me. It has to be somebody else, that it's their fault because I don't want to be blamed, whatever. So they don't want to look at themselves. So how would they even look at ancestral if they're not even willing to look at their potential responsibility of a situation, of a pattern or whatever? Then society doesn't, is very two-dimensional. It's like, if I can't see it, if I can't touch it, it doesn't exist, or it's not a part of the issue. Yeah, and that goes in a lot of different health issues that why things are chronic. That's why a lot of things don't get better, because there's a very two-dimensional thought process of how to approach things. So, yeah, unless you come to somebody that knows how to look at some of this stuff, and that's a very minority of people, you won't know. You won't know, and it just will follow you. You know?
And then we have like generations of lost people with, why do I feel so heavy? And it's like, that bag wasn't even yours.
Yeah.
Dang.
I mean, you have to even think, because if you think about ancestral and, I would say, transgenerational issues, how many people within a family are ready and willing to break a ancestral cycle and do that work, versus just get along or just move forward, just move past. That's a small percentage of people right there. A lot of people just trying to survive versus knowing that they can actually shift, heal, and thrive, as well as if they have kids, that their healing, their personal healing of their traumas, their neglects, their stressors, triggers, whatever, is generational as well. And so them healing themselves heals their kids prior to kids having to attract some of these lessons, let's say. So, and there's science that shows there's at least 3 generations. There's also other science that shows 6 generations of what's called epigenetics, which is almost the transferred traits, personalities, emotional traumas through generations. I think there's more, but science can only measure what they know how to measure. And so when you have even Western science can show that there's transgenerational effects, how much of our things are not ours. And again, it's not to, relinquish responsibilities, but it is also just to see things as they are. And this is a whole new healing process, I would say, because letting go of these patterns can just open up opportunities for your life in relationships, in business, in creativity, in family. I mean, it has a lot of opportunities to create new lives for people.
That's so true. I can think back to times, I've had my business for 17 years, and I can think back to times where I had an opportunity like right there. I knew it was right there. And I'm like, man, why isn't it coming through? And if I think back to it now, if my energy field, which is 6 feet out, right? It extends something like that.
Different people, depending how much they've worked on their energy field, can be even more.
Okay.
It can be even smaller. So,
but if it's radiant in proximity, and even though I think I have it together, but I can clearly remember feeling like trapped
Yeah.
with all of this angst, like stored inside of my body.
Yeah.
Not thinking that other people can read up, like, feel that, or not thinking that I could just mask it always. And I can just remember back to that time and be like, that's probably why that didn't come in for you.
Yeah. And I think you still have some of that.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Awesome. There's always more work to do.
Yes, we always do. Actually, I think that's from your father's side.
Do you know what's so fascinating? I'm telling you, you always read my mind. And I'll tell you why. So when I did the retreat last week, and we had already done the work, and we had come up with like this, fibroid tumor that I've been dealing with that comes off and on, and it was connected to the mother lineage and mother wounds, which was very obvious. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. That's so obvious to me. So naturally, when I did the retreat, it all came out, and I'm like, oh my God, perfect. This is like perfect. Well, at the end, it was almost like a little voice inside my head was like, just so you know, that was like the sneak peek. This other father wound stuff is coming for you. I'm like, oh God. And I knew it. It's okay. I'm ready for it. But that's exactly what I learned at the end was, this is the next chapter. Get ready.
Yeah.
Buckle up, Buttercup, because you didn't realize that was maybe because it wasn't like at the forefront, like so activated or easily activated or right there. The other seems so much more obvious, but I was like, oh, wow, I didn't even know you're coming for me. And that's a gnarly picture to look at too, because now I'm pissed, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is very common, especially when one parent's depends how the abuse or neglect or impact, an emotional impact was so much more obvious than another parent's. It's easy to concentrate on that one parent.
Yes.
And then you miss the other. I mean, because in some ways, like if you, not saying this is you, but just as an example, if someone had an abusive parent, and then someone was doing the healing about this abusive parent over years and years and years, and things keep coming up, whatever, they don't always look at the feeling of lack of having lack of protection from the other patient. Yes.
That's what it was. I was like, oh my God, what the hell?
Yeah.
Nobody protected me.
Yes. So that lack of protection, as not as physical, as not as in your face, it's the, if you think about films, like the negative image, there's the positive image, but what's on that negative image? And sometimes the negative image shows you things you were missing on the positive image because of just how it shows up. And that lack of protection, the feeling that you weren't important enough to protect, that, you weren't valued enough to be taken away from that situation, and done something about is its own wound and its own trauma that is just such a passive trauma that is often ignored.
Yeah. And that feeling of like, oh, she's tough. She's got it. She can do it. I'm like, well, she was like 8. So maybe that wasn't her job to do that.
Yeah.
She doesn't even understand the context of what to do with that information.
Right. And that's also that judging that child, and when that child's supposed to be a child. Yeah. And again, that also comes into when we aren't allowing play in our life, aren't allowing joy in our life, because we're stuck in blaming that child for not being enough, doing enough at a time of trauma, at a time of abuse, at a time of neglect, when ideally, optimally, that's not their job.
Or putting so much pride in the fact that they can handle so much, and it's like,
well, that's when they start to draw in a lot more in their life where they just have to handle things, so it becomes its own pattern of handling, and that sometimes goes in relationships, that goes into business, relationships, it goes into other things, like they accept jobs, they accept relationships, they accept friendships because they can handle it. But do you want to go through a life of just handling things, or would you like to thrive? Would you like to bring in things that you enjoy, that you love, people you love, that you can actually be authentic and connect to. And so this pattern, again, of judging that child who had trauma, or using it as a badge of honor, and survival is, a badge of honor of sorts, but it's like holding on to that survival to keep getting that type of badge of honor keeps a lifestyle that doesn't fully let you express, doesn't fully let you be present, doesn't fully let you enjoy, doesn't fully let you authentically love. Because also the definition of love gets skewed at those points in time. Someone not abusing me is love.
Yeah, Well, that looks really good because I've seen it look like this, and you're like, well, that's still not that great.
Yeah, it's not a high bar, And so we sometimes also have to start to redefine some of our words, redefine some of our perceptions, so that we see more than what we did when we were younger, when we were traumatized, when we were abused, when we were...
Do you know what my question for you is?
Oh, go for it.
So after that experience and when I was home, I was talking to, I have 3 brothers.
All right.
And so we're various ages and we all have various experiences and various lenses of our shared experiences that are so, they can be so different at times. It's really interesting. But I found this to be true. My little brother was telling me about certain experiences. He's like, you don't remember that? And I'm like, no, but now that you're telling me, I'm pissed. I was pissed, to be honest. I was like, I don't remember that, but now when you tell me, all of that rings true and makes perfect sense. And I didn't even remember that part of the environment being so explosive and like jarring to my system. Well, of course I'm kind of like now reworking all of those patterns in my mind.
Yeah. Well, there's a few different... I would say ways or reasons why that happens. Sometimes there's so much going on that you just can't handle taking in more.
I felt that a lot.
Yeah. Sometimes you've already disassociated due to trauma, abuse, or whatever, so that to preserve your psyche, to preserve your mental emotional stability, I can't take in any more information, so I disassociate from whatever's going on in the environment just to maintain my own sanity, my own survival. So there's that aspect, and sometimes it just becomes so common with some variation that's white noise. Oh
my gosh, yeah. I think it's all of those things.
It can be, and so that's why sometimes I think, as we talked about last time, if we heal a certain aspect, if we think about the spiral staircase, once you go around and are healing different things or living your life, and you come back around to that same point but at a higher level, you're like, I thought I handled this already. It's like, well, you did a lot of great work, but you built a foundation so you could handle this next layer of it.
Yeah. And I love that you brought that up. And I definitely want to just highlight for the viewers, because I know I've had this feeling, or the listeners, when you get to that point, I would see it as a failure. I'm like, why am I reverting back? Like, I've already done this. I thought I was better. And then I would judge myself and think, like, I should have already been over this by now. Like, you've done all this work, but what you're saying is, no, you're just at a new level to clear it even more or differently.
And that's either how much good work you've already done, because you've built yourself to that level so you can handle that next nuance, that next revelation, that next insight, or you're just now ready for that from a different, maybe having support in your system now, maybe having, different shifts in your life. So yeah, it's all usually due to either great work previously or great timing, because now you're having somebody else allowed to help you to see a new perspective, a new nuance that you're now ready for.
So when you picked up earlier on the father wound, how did you find that?
I saw it. So you were just talking about it, and my vision just started to focus. Like, I just saw this wound. And the more you talked, the more it just kept like yelling at me in some way. So I was like, all right, maybe this is what wants to be looked at and addressed. And it's like things show up when they're supposed to show up, and so we can tap into that if you'd like.
I think let's do it.
All right.
What do you guys think? You want to tap in? Let's do it.
All right. So, so that is definitely like a broken heart on the father side. Not just shattered. It's broken and wounded. So it wasn't just like an event, but it was like over time, like that wound got a little bit more. And something's coming up of like a lack of attunement. And attunement is when being able to connect to the child and see the child's needs. And so this is probably even like a heightened lack of attunement, meaning like, oh, I need to be saved. Not just, I don't just need attention. I don't just need nourishment. I don't just need, I actually need to be protected. And protected from another parent is even more significant versus just some stranger or random. And so having somebody who is, I would almost say like selfish with their masculinity. I don't know why, but it's almost like they'll use their masculinity for themselves in some ways, but for anybody else. And when I say masculinity, I mean, part of the masculinity is being protective. Part of the masculinity is providing. Some of the masculinity, these are like healthy aspects of masculine, and and to be able to help someone feel safe is also masculine. There's aspects of feminine to that too, but a little bit different. And to know that someone can help you feel safe in an environment versus safe just being you. That's that masculine, and it just feels like he did that all for himself. And
there was two.
Yeah.
Like a parent and a step parent.
Both. It feels like that's almost your mother's wound replicating in you, meaning she's picking similar people that then you're exposed to. So you have similar wounds from different people.
Yeah.
Right. So, all right. So in some ways that allows us to open up for recognizing that's your mother's wound. Can we let her have her wound back?
Yeah.
That this is not your pattern. You necessarily have to take responsibility for. Those weren't men you picked for fathers. Those were just put upon you. So, all right. And there's something dealing with feeling valued, the lack of. And so that also goes into people pleasing, especially men.
Yeah. I'm an MVP at that back in the day. I'm a chronic, I'm like overcoming that.
Yeah.
Continually.
Yes. A recovering people pleasing, male people pleasing addict. Yeah. And
to keep yourself safe. If everyone is explosive, then, my mom had a lot of masculinity in herself, bless her heart, from who knows what. But, I think all I was exposed to was masculine energy.
Well, yeah, but it was also, I would say, a wounded masculine energy versus you didn't have a lot of the healthy masculine energy to be a model. You had all the wounded. Even your mother's was for survival, I would say. But at the same point, she kept bringing in things to her life for her to survive from. So again, she kept repeating her own wounds of survival and putting you and your brothers through that same wound of that being that lifestyle. So, all right, there's still something with that masculine wound. There's the pattern of trying to fix and heal that toxic masculine wound on others to feel safe. But that's also attracting in toxic masculine people to heal. And it feels like it's not as bad as it used to be, but there's still something in there that is, it's almost seeing that wound in people tug on your heartstring. It is that that child in you. This is my next chance that maybe I can heal that wound and actually feel that energy there to protect me versus abuse me. And wanting that, aggressiveness to protect you versus be used against you.
At me, towards me.
Towards you. And
even if it's not personal, even if there's a lot of instances where I can see it.
Yeah.
But I also still don't have the best way to navigate it, because when it instinctively comes in, it feels comfortable because it's what I know.
Right.
So to me, it doesn't read off until later.
Yeah. So this is that being able to see it from the first thing. It's like, okay, it's one thing if somebody is in that state, the male's in that state, who honestly and is actively trying to work to heal that, but it's also supporting them in healing it versus trying to heal it for them.
You know what my meditation retreat told me?
Right.
It was so interesting because I was in a group with other people everybody's on their own journey, right? And so you're laying there, and I noticed about myself that, I would instantly like awake and see somebody uncomfortable. And my first instinct was like, and I told myself, sit down. You're here for yourself. It's not your job to fix that. You're actually getting in their way. And this was like the information that was coming to me is you really, in your heart, you think you're helping, but you're not helping yourself and you're not helping them.
Yeah.
And you really have to let them be uncomfortable. You have to be okay that they're uncomfortable.
As well as you can be safe when somebody else is uncomfortable.
We talked about, remember? We talked about that the first time. The very first muscle test you did on me, and you were like, are you congruent with I think it was like thriving or flourishing when other people were doing bad? And I was like, no.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Well, and this is also just a nuance to that. It is just somebody feeling uncomfortable. Somebody feeling, unsafe in their own self, their own thoughts. Can you be safe during that time? And it's like you weren't allowed to be safe growing up when people were uncomfortable in their own thoughts, their own perspectives, so you always had to try to help out or just to keep yourself safe, or brothers or whatever. So that followed along. So it's not only if someone's really being bad or feeling bad or doing badly or is in trauma themselves. Just the little uncomfortableness, the twitchiness of someone just not sitting right brings your attention away from yourself because I'm not safe.
I'm reading the room for safety. You're so right.
Yeah.
It's so true. Because it's not that I'm not uncomfortable with people being uncomfortable and holding the space for that and like taking it on or anything. It's like my safety that's so interesting.
Right. And there's also a different thing where, like you just said, being able to hold space for somebody who's uncomfortable and whatever, you've gotten to the point where you can do that. But can you focus on yourself when someone's being uncomfortable in the space? Not because your direction is, I'm putting my energy towards them to hold the space so I can do that. But can I redirect that energy towards myself even when people are uncomfortable in that space?
Well, I have to tell you that I think I passed my first level of that this past weekend.
Yes.
Because it was exactly what I noticed. And I was like, no, you just need to be here for yourself.
Yes.
They're figuring out their own stuff.
All right. So let's tune into this.
Let's.
If somebody was in their masculine energy and feeling uncomfortable in their thoughts, in their, can you still hold that space?
That's a really great question. Let me think about it. Doesn't matter what level of masculine.
It could be feminine in their masculinity. It could be a man in their masculinity. It could be in that toxic masculinity that they keep getting agitated and pulled towards that toxicity.
No.
Yes. You're correct. Yes. That's your next level. This is part of that wound.
Yeah.
And so that also, again, like that spiral staircase, now you're ready to this part of that wound versus you have gained so much that you can hold space for people who are agitated, not having to just help them. You can hold space or be in your own self as someone's in their feminine and not being able to hold their femininity as well, and you can still focus on yourself. But that masculine is that masculine wound from your father, stepfather. It's like, okay, it's not safe if they are not sure of how they're thinking, they're not sure of their comfort level, because I don't know what's going to happen, and it could be explosive.
Very.
And so, yes. So, so there's something about a fake picture of yourself, and in that situation, it's not being a target. It's not being it's almost like you have to bring in the feminine to balance out their masculine.
And this is a great thing. How do I do that in regards to all of my patterning is so masculine? Because I feel like a lot of women, especially like CEOs or career women, relate to this because we talked about this a lot. You so want to feel safe to be in that feminine energy, but it's been so unpracticed for so long. How do you really work that out?
There's a few things to that. One is to not buy into the concept that femininity is weak. There's a lot of power in femininity. And so, I think some of it is people feel like, oh, to be feminine, I have to be submissive. To be feminine, I have to be weak. To feminine, I have to be subservient to masculine, who's more dominant or whatever, and I have to be protected from. And I think that's a misconcept of what a healthy feminine is. Healthy feminine is very creative. A powerful feminine is very nurturing, and there's power in nurturing what is strong, and healthy strong, not just power strong. It is so. What do you bring to the table in the feminine? And it's not just to comfort someone who's in their toxicity. It's not just to try to keep everybody safe. It's not just to fix people. There's the masculine trying to fix people, and there's the feminine trying to fix people. So I think that's a misconception, and that's also why you have some of these CEOs and female politicians, all in their pantsuits or in their other stuff, because they're trying to out-masculine the males, and rarely does that work.
Yeah, that was like my generation. I'm 44. That was, I believe, my generation of up-and-coming CEOs, career women, whatever you want to say, because I started when I was 26. So the only people that I knew to model, like outwardly, that were in that sphere were men.
Yeah.
And so in order to be seen, we kind of suited up.
Well, and I think suited up was also an armor of sorts, because I would say back then and earlier, and sometimes I'm not going to say it's not here now, but a lot of the men and their CEOs are very self-absorbed, also feeling very dominating. So they're looking for women to dominate. So you don't want to give the opportunity. You want to be taken seriously. You want to take that off the any sexual stuff off the table, to be seen as, and so it's understandable in certain situations, but it's also that's giving them the power of telling you who you can be or you can't be, and and being able to be feminine and powerful and brilliant and successful and trailblazer, is being in your authenticity. You know, trying to out masculine the male, is that really being authentic? And so do people gravitate more to authenticity or lack of authenticity? You know, so, you know, and I could say there's probably multiple political things you can point to where it doesn't work. You know, it doesn't mean the men were authentic. It just, you know, they're playing their perceived strengths.
Do you know what it makes me think of? From our session last time, we were doing this visualization, and in the visualization, I found myself, not the first, like there was one or two that I was like, I couldn't tap in. I just wasn't there. And then I finally dropped into it, and I was underwater, like coming out of the box that society, my family, my lineage had put me in, myself as well. Yeah. And I was like swimming out for air underneath that box. And I realized, like, wow, I've been doing that in a lot of ways, even to myself, that I didn't realize. I immediately changed my Instagram handle. It was Zen Jenn, which was a journey that I was on to literally calm my nervous system for like, I don't know, 7-10 years, something like that. But then I thought, it's giving people the wrong impression, because then anytime I tap into healthy anger or any other emotion, they're like, well, what's wrong with you? Then you're not really authentically that. I'm like, no, I'm just actually a fully rounded person, and I have a lot of different emoji feelings, you know? And it was really interesting. I said, I don't want to live that way anymore. And I just changed it to my name.
I think it's awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool. It sounds so silly, but I think it's...
But at the same point, even if you were living a life of Zen, doesn't mean you can't have emotions. And for somebody else to tell you that you can't, or that something's wrong with you for having them, again, that is, we don't need to please them either. And it's like, no, this is just an authentic thing. This is an experience I've had. This is what my body's responding, you know, and it can be giving you hints from earlier things that you're responding to, but at the same point, you deserve those emotions. Even if you're, you know, trying to live a life of Zenness as your more constant goal of, you know, that's your bar that you're trying to reach, but doesn't mean life doesn't happen. Yeah. And so that's being authentic.
Because then otherwise I was putting myself in this box of perfection, and then that's a whole nother, you know, that's a whole nother topic. But I was like, no, I'm a normal person, and women are also allowed to be mad. Can we just say it out loud and talk about it? It's okay to be pissed sometimes.
I think everybody's allowed to be mad. I think everybody's allowed to have their emotions. And a lot of people growing up, parents couldn't handle emotions. You know, maybe fathers more than mothers, but I think it happened in both situations. And so there's like, don't cry. I can't handle you when you're being emotional. Come back when you are. So again, it keeps shutting down. Like, I'll only be accepted if I have no emotions. I'll only be accepted if, you know, I suppress everything. That's where illness comes from.
I think that's where my fibroid is. Well, at least in my retreat, it was talking to me. I said, oh God, I'm talking to a tumor. This is weird. But it was cool.
Recognize cysts, fibroids are encapsulations. So they're walling off something. And, you know, fibroids are also more feminine. So that's walling off your femininity, potentially, or walling off what you're afraid won't be accepted in the feminine. And allowing yourself to say, hey, you know, this won't be accepted. This is something I have to keep separate from my being. You know, that also can be feminine resources, which is nurturing, nourishing, and of self as well as others. So if I nurture myself, I'm selfish. And nurturing is also very feminine. So I have to wall off my nurturing so I don't look selfish. So there's a lot of different things you can be walling off in your femininity, and separating yourself from your own resources.
That makes sense.
You know, in that way. And but also there's some things that you can see as toxic feminine or perceive as toxic feminine that you say, well, that's where my strength is. but it's not acceptable. But I'm just going to keep it back here just in case I need it.
Mm-hmm.
So you're keeping it reserved versus letting it go. And you're walling it off because it's not fully acceptable, but just in case I need that power, it's there when I need it. And again, that's a different walling off of something that might not be in your healthiest, and not recognizing that you have power in a lot of ways that are healthy. Because again, being mad is healthy. Having anger is healthy. That's sticking up for an injustice that you feel was done to you in some way. And you're allowing yourself to acknowledge that. So does that make sense?
It makes total sense.
Yes. So, all right. So back to that father wound, because it keeps yelling at me.
Okay. I'm so excited what's going to happen.
So it's almost that dynamic that you feel chained to. Interesting. Why does it comes up? It comes up. It's chained to. That's childhood. What happened at 2 years old?
2 years old? I think I'm pretty sure my mom met my stepdad when I was about 3.
Yeah.
So my mom, I believe I was born, but I don't think they were together like right after I was born.
Right. So.
And I do know my dad told me that a lot. They would drop me off at my grandmother's, who I love. And so I would be with her a lot when I was an infant, which I didn't know.
So.
And she would leave, my mom would leave for like periods of time that I obviously didn't know that.
Yeah. So like year and a half, 2 years, remind me, were your parents still together-ish?
I don't think so.
Did your mother drop you off with your father, or where was your father in that time period?
I think there was like dropping off, sometimes staying with my grandmother for months. That's like newer information, but I think it was like a lot of that back and forth.
With your father?
With my mom and my father.
Yeah. Because I don't know, I just keep getting a vision like him saying you're mine, but also being a little volatile. And so it's, when we're that young, we just start taking in information, and there's not only the information that's verbalized, but there's the energy of it. There's so if someone gives off the energy of possession, and that's like, then there's that, I belong to. Even if not said, sometimes, the visualization. I mean, when women are pregnant and they're not dealing with their emotions and they suppress it, well, where does it go? It goes into the baby. It's not like it's verbalized to the baby per se, but there's a frequency, there's a chemical that goes into the baby that they take in. And sometimes they are born with some of these effects of those emotions, or they like, why do I have this fear? Why do I have this? Again, goes generational. We're made of 70% plus fluid water. Water holds memory. So when we push emotions into our body more, our cells hold on to those. And when someone's pregnant, the baby cells hold on to these. So there's a lot of, this is where frequency comes in. This is where some more of the energy of it comes from. But there's a contract. All right. So it feels like there's like this goes where it goes a little more esoteric, more physical.
I'm ready.
Didn't think we were going to go here. But there feels like there's like an emotional contract from you and your father of like that type of relationship. And so that almost ties you into that type of relationship. And so if you're up for it, we're going to do a little visualization.
Okay, let's do it.
All right. Let's ground a little bit for this one.
Okay.
All right. So I want you to think about your feet being roots And those roots going to the center of Mother Earth and allowing that pure nourishment from Mother Earth coming up through the roots, through your feet, through every cell, tissue, organ in your body, nourishing your body. Then from the crown of your head, I want you to visualize into the deep sky, space, universe, where you feel connected to source in whatever light color that is, and feel that connection from your crown chakra all the way up. And from that point of source, you're going to allow that divine love, divine light to come through that crown chakra, washing through and over every cell, tissue, organ in your body. So every inhale, you're pulling in the nourishment from Mother Earth. Every exhale through the nose, you're pulling down that divine love, divine light. All right. And we're going to shortcut into something. So versus going to a whole Akashic thing, we're going to go right into the filing cabinet of yours.
Okay.
And I want you to try to tune into and connect to that filing cabinet filled with all these contracts to the unhealthy masculine, to the unhealthy father figure. And if you're done with those contracts, I want you to have your spirit guides, your angel guides, take those contracts and send them to the divine fire. And watch them burn and separate from you. Because those were put on you. Those were ones that you consciously made. As well as the contract that you have to hide your divine feminine, your healthy feminine, and blocks you off from stepping into your healthy feminine, and burn those. Now, while you're in that space, I want you to look into that masculine father wound, right heart wound, and see what you see there.
Okay.
What do you see there?
I see a lot of broken pieces, like not pieces of my heart, but physically like
so
breaking.
So, and let me ask you this. Are all those pieces yours?
Mm-mm.
All right. So I want you to have your angel guides, spirit guides, whatever you use, to separate what's not yours and what is yours. And put what's not yours in a pile away from you. Allow them to send back to sender. All right. Now, something else. We're going to cleanse, clear, and upgrade those shards that are yours. Allow them to heal. And allow your guides to place them back to where they belong. Allow them to allow love in to help heal. There's a piece in there that's not yours. Mother's side. It's your mother's father's.
I never met him.
Yeah, but it's there. So it's like deep in this right side, deep inside that heart on the right. So we're going to ask your spirit guides to highlight that piece to help remove it. Oh, divine surgery.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little better. All right. All right. Now, what does it feel it needs now?
My heart.
On that side, on that masculine side.
What's the word I'm looking for? It needs like softness.
100%.
Yeah.
And how do you visualize giving it the softness?
I don't know, Dr. Jon.
All right.
Yeah.
So if you did know, what would it be?
How to give my heart that softness?
Yeah.
I mean, my instinct is that I'm going to have to give it to myself.
Yeah. You not only have to give it, you have to allow it.
Mm-hmm.
Can you allow yourself to surrender and receive that softness, that love, that authentic love from yourself, and knowing that you're valuable enough to give it to yourself, that it's worth something?
When your whole life you've been taught to be tough and armored up, it's so interesting.
Yeah. But can you see how this softness is tough?
Mm-hmm. Just not able to access it like as easily as the other.
Right. But it's also perspective. It's a perception.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like you've seen some people who've revealed the trauma they've been through and just broke down in tears and whatever, and do you not think they're tough for doing that?
Yeah.
You know, you see somebody who's actually able to receive actual help,
Mm-hmm.
you know, strong help, protection, or just someone to be there for support. Is that not tough for someone who's been through abuse to do so?
Mm-hmm.
So it's hugely tough.
Mm-hmm.
And not tough as in hard, but it's tough as in strong. It's tough as in being in your own power to allow yourself to do it, as well as not only allow yourself to do it, but be okay doing it, that I'm not going to be weak by doing this. I am not going to be hurt or unsafe by
Mm-hmm.
doing this.
The safety is such a big thing. That's what I really learned on my trip was like, oh, wow, you've just really never felt safe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was eye-opening. It was like kind of jarring.
Well, there's a psychology to the chakra system. And like the root chakra is a lot of we're feeling safe, the right to be, right to have.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've never felt that,
Who does she think she is?
Well, not only that, but you start to overdevelop your third eye chakra, your crown chakra, which is to be able to assess your environment for safety, be able to read people, to be able to see things, and the truth of things for your own safety. So you start to rely heavily on your upper chakra system because you can't trust the lower chakra system. And so there's a psychology to the chakra stuff about safety, which makes sense. And so again, being able to read your environment is an adaptation to not feeling safe.
Oh yeah, and hypervigilance used to be like my badge of honor. I didn't even realize it, but I was always scanning the room. I was always like jittery. So much so where people would make fun of me, like, why are you so worried? I'm like, I'm actually not, but my body does respond that way.
Yeah.
And I didn't have the language or understanding of what that was.
Yeah. So can you give that masculine aspect of yourself love? So that you can be that model of feminine masculine relationship that you allow in your life. You know, that you can be strong while vulnerable, you know, in your masculine and feminine. You know, you can still be discerning of who you allow in, but it doesn't have to be that armor, because again, our life needs to be able to receive.
Or the other opposite for me was true as well. Both were true.
Yeah.
That I was literally open, accessible to anyone.
Yeah.
And I would take anyone's and just store it right here in my little womb.
Yeah.
And that was something I learned recently too, is, oh, you were storing everybody's stuff.
Yeah. Well, because they didn't want to deal with it. So you were again keeping yourself safe by holding on to their stuff for them, and not having had permission to let it go. And do you really need permission to let their stuff go? Or can you just be your own higher self to say, okay, everybody else's stuff is their stuff. I'm not responsible. I'm not going to take their karma away from them and take it onto myself. You know, everyone deserves their own karma. So can you just give it back?
That's definitely like a familiar path for sure.
Yeah. So can you give the toxic masculine back?
But if I do that, does that mean those people are like, then they're ready for their karma from that? Either way, it's something I don't need to think about.
Yeah, that's not for you to think about. You know,
but that's what I would think about, to be honest, if we're being honest.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it's always been their karma. You know, and you taking it on for them doesn't mean that they don't have it anymore. It's just you're now also like taking it on.
We're like coexisting karmically. And
co-creating some of the toxicity. You know, versus co-creating creativity and nourishment and love. It's holding on to and persisting what's existing of that, the toxicity.
I could really see that in like a lot of different dynamics. If I was like just thinking about that right now, I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. So again, it's like taking on responsibility of everybody else's stuff. You know, at some point, you know, it's you're being a collector, you're being a hoarder of their issues.
I'm being a hoarder in my belly.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm a belly hoarder.
Well, and it's like, you know, and it's like afraid to give birth to their issues.
I'm glad you brought that up, because in my journeying experience, my baby came in. And because I really have desired to have a child of my own, if that were to work out for me, and the baby said, I haven't been able to come in because it would like be the death of you. And I said, can you say more? Because I was like asking, can you say more? And it said, because you haven't learned how to let things go. So if I come in, like, in the love that you have for me, you'll hold it all in. And like, I had a cancer scare last year, and I think it's all connected to that of you just won't be able to handle it. Not that you're not capable. It's not about that. It was that your habit, your behavior won't allow you to be able to flourish in motherhood, because you're like trying to protect all the things and help all the people and hoard all the things. It was fascinating.
Well, yeah. So it's also hoarding that love. I was like, oh, I finally got this pure, I'm going to protect it, but protect it so much that it's not allowing it grow, you know, so that becomes that overprotective. You know, you see parents who get overprotective, so they smother and don't allow the child to, you know, and they enable, and so they don't allow the child to fully grow into their strengths, into their mature selves in various ways. So that can be, as well as if you're not allowing some of that toxicity of others to go, you're not allowing room for something new to come in. So you're occupying that space. So yeah, again, are you ready to let it go?
So what does that look like? If you were to break it down for the average person and for me, what would that look like?
So for everyone, it's a little different because sometimes, again, when you do visualization, visualization is a metaphorical representation. But that metaphorical representation sometimes can have a very real frequency effect. So it's like what is real for you and how you visualize it to being real for you can have a very physiological beneficial effect, as well as a shift in lifestyle frequency attraction. And what I mean by that is if you change what you're allowing in, if you're changing what you are discerning from, if you're changing what you are allowing to grow within you, if you're changing what you're allowing to connect to you in authenticity, you're changing your life. You're changing your life pattern. You're changing what's moving forward in you. So for everybody else, that might be a little different. So it's like, how real can you make that representation of giving something back, whether you give it to a divine, higher being, whether you see yourself disposing of it, whether you see yourself handing it back to a specific person, whether living or dead.
I think I like the idea of disposing of it. For some reason that resonates with me.
And then if you visualize disposing of it, you also want to visualize it transmuting and transforming into healthier, nourishing energy for you, or for the world, or wherever you want to give it. So it's not just disposing, but you also have to visualize that transmutation into something nourishing, nurturing for you, whether divine love, whether divine light, whether it's just that, growing energy that is healthy. So it can be very, just as visualizations get to be very individualized, this is also very individualized what works best for your system. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I like that idea.
So why don't you try that, visualizing it, disposing, and package it up, gather.
Are we trying it now?
We're trying it now.
All right.
Yes.
Let's do it.
I want you to visualize all this karma that is others. Never belonged to you in the beginning. You just started collecting. Karma collector. Yes. Versus a karma chameleon. Yes. So gather that and see if you're holding anything back for the just in case in those back rooms, and allow that all just to be packaged. And when that's collected, if you want to dispose of it, you can see, do you want to dispose of it by fire, by acid, by water, by tornado, by, how do you visualize that you want to dispose of it and transmute it?
I think by fire.
All right. Fire pit?
Yeah.
All right. So we can have a transmuting fire pit.
Let's do it.
All right. A bonfire pit. And we're going to have a tube where all that stuff goes through and transmutes into healthy, optimal, and nourishing, nurturing, blessed energy. And put all that in the fire and have help, your support systems help put that in the fire. And watch it transmute. And feel that health come from it. Feel that light come from it. Feel that love come from it. And this is that authentic love, the pure love. Let go of all past definitions. Good job. All right, now feel back into that heart. See what that feels like.
Yeah, it's definitely not shards of glass.
Yeah.
Like literal glass.
Yeah. And yeah, there's also something blocking in your throat a little bit. And I think there is something in the throat because sometimes voice is a wounded spirit of the heart.
Okay.
So, so it's allowing that wounded spirit to be nourished to be able to say whatever it needs to say. And yeah, something in the throat. So if there's something you want to say to yourself that you haven't been able before because of that wounded heart, what would that be?
Something I wanted to say to myself.
Definitely is dealing with redefining love. You know, and I think it's exploring a new love with yourself. Because again, the definition of love was, I would say, to the mildest words would be like tarnished growing up. And it's like redefining, re-exploring that self-love, and then that's also the love of your life. You know, to be able to love that life from that purity, from that, because then if you're creating a life from love,
versus from survival, or
versus survival, so then you can have some life of joy. You know, and to succeed and to thrive, you can also play. Again, what you were never allowed to do because survival was a priority. So
I realized the last week or so that like the first 20 years of my life were just surviving that. The next 20 years were unraveling the first 20.
Yeah.
So now I feel like I'm in this third season of like really living. And that's what really feels true to me now. I'm like, oh my God, you've just been working so much on so many different things. What does it look like to just be a person like living a joyous life?
Right. As well as, do you have to stop living while you're still healing? You know, can you heal while you live?
And that's a lot of like probably rubbing, right?
Well, yeah, because you know, a lot of people say, well, I can't fully live until I finish this thing, you know, finish healing this. I can't fully be in, you know, and give myself to this life without, and it's like, but why? Why can't you? You know, it's like, can I also heal and live at the same time? And this is a very common thing. But yeah, can I live and heal at the same time? And can I allow myself to receive while I'm healing? You know, versus just can't receive until I'm done healing. Well, if we're on the path of life journey and breaking cycles and healing, it's usually a life journey. So we shouldn't have to stop living or not live waiting to the heal. We can heal along the way.
It really makes me think of when I was finishing this retreat and my heart just felt so open. It was kind of terrifying. It was great. You were like, this is awesome. But it was also like, I felt like I had to protect myself because I had never felt so open like that, that I was like worried how things were going to affect me.
Well, I think it also opens up your life to so many potential amazing things. And that uncertainty, that unknown is also terrifying. And to be able to hold your heart open during those unknown, terrifying, when we were growing up, that unknown was dangerous. So being able to now hold it open and say, hey, this is a different circumstance, and be in that fear, because again, it's like that courage, that bravery is to be able to do things even with the fear versus in spite of the fear, you know.
It was very wobbly. It was very fun. I was like, wow, this is super awkward for me, but I'm getting there.
Well, weebles may wobble, but they don't fall down.
Exactly.
So.
Oh, I think that's the perfect way to end our conversation,
Yes.
Jon.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for everything.
You're welcome.
We really appreciate it. I can't wait to see what we discover next time.
Exactly. I think so much is, can't wait to see where your next level is.
Yeah. Wherever she may be.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for listening. For the audience here, we really appreciate you. For Victor, thank you for everything.
Yes. Thank you all. Thank you, Victor.
Until next time.
Ciao.